Now, it's my understanding, very limited understanding, of county commissioner, that you're going to have to deal with some rural issues as well. What would you say if somebody said, you know, you live in the city, you don't understand acreages, for example, or you don't understand what kind of rural issues we face?
Well, I would go and answer them that I am a farm girl originally. I'm from northeast Nebraska. I was born and raised on a dairy farm. And that's where I learned my work ethic. A lot of people say, Barb, that Baier is nothing but work. and I tend to really enjoy working and being active. And that's because I learned at a very young age that work is very necessary. And I mucked out the dairy barn for a year before I earned my first new bicycle. So I know a lot about that. But I know about what happens when you have unregulated development of land. And I'll tell you the story of my own little farm. I was raised on what I call the last of the idyllic kinds of farms that you see in a storybook. We had ducks, we had chickens, we had pigs, we had calves and cows and all of that. We had owned a quarter section, and then we rented a quarter section. We had 3 shelter belts that surrounded our home, and we did a lot to go and keep the land viable for the future. We had a small little farm pond that the Canadian geese would land on every fall and every spring, and things of that sort. We had wild turkeys, we had deers. Well, about the time that I left to go to college, my father, for a variety of different reasons, decided to sell the family farm. And that he did. And usually when you have a sale, you expect that some changes will occur on your land. But what followed is nothing what we ever expected. Agribusiness bought up our land, and what was very valuable about our land is we had a couple of direct natural springs to the aquifer. We never lacked for water. They went and they burnt down all of the buildings. They bulldozed all the shelter belts. They took the tops of the hills, the rolling hills, and leveled them. They put a pivot irrigation in the middle of our land, and then they started to do what we would call factory farming. After about 3-4 years, I went up to see that land, and not a blade, not a weed grew on that land anymore, because they burnt the soil through something we call chemigation. They put lots of chemicals into that irrigation, and it went and it burnt the soil, and nothing would grow. So I feel very passionately that we need to go and have regulation of acreage development and all sorts of different kinds of farming, because we, this generation, are responsible for future generations to have arable land, land that will produce food, that will have a natural environment for things like wild turkeys and deers. And currently here in Lancaster County, we have basically unregulated acreage development. Some regulations were brought about during the 1970s, but it's been more than 30 years since this issue has been visited, and those regulations no longer go and meet the needs of what is happening in our rural areas. The quality of life in our rural areas in Lancaster County is a concern for us all, because it impacts water quality. We have a lot of acreage developments where you will see every 3 acres in a sewage lagoon, and you'll see this in large tracts, and you can't go every few blocks really and have a sewage lagoon without it impacting the water quality. And so I really would make it a huge priority of my role on the county board to go and have the kind of scientifically based, consistent, fair legislation developed to help go and guide acreage development. I'm not against people going and pursuing their dream of living in the country, because I would be, if I had the money, I'd be right there with them. But I think that we as a community, as a county, and the local government need to make sure that that dream of living in the country doesn't turn into a nightmare because we didn't take the time to use science to guide our regulations.
Well, just in case you're tuning in right now and you're wondering what we're talking about, this is Barb Baier, and this is the Watchful Citizen, a television show brought to you by the Lancaster County Democrats. And she just gave a very passionate opinion about how she would regulate development as much as possible as a county commissioner. And so, Barb, I really think it's about the time when you need to let our viewers know how they could get in touch with your campaign, what they could do if they're moved to help you in some way. You know, give us the spiel.
Okay. Well, you can contact me by going and calling me on my cell phone, which is 402-202-1846. Or you can go to my website, which is www.baierforcommissioner.com. And I really want to stress that this is a grassroots campaign. I've been out to Malcolm, and I plan on going out across all of the county to visit with rural residents, but also am meeting with neighborhood associations in all areas of Lincoln. And I think it's very much time for us to have a change on the county board to go and reflect a balance between the needs of rural and urban residents, and to make a high priority on improving the quality of life for everyone. So I would appreciate your support.